Because you don't have to send James Harden where he wants to go. You don't have to send him to Brooklyn.
All right, we got to get to the Harden stuff because this was the bombshell that came out last night about James Harden, and you had written an article about how Houston should not move James Harden. It seems like they don't have a choice anymore. When a guy turns down, well, he turned down $100 million.
Yeah, they have a choice though to
an
wait.
Extension. And the message was clear: get me to Brooklyn. I heard Brian Windhorst talking about this, and it painted a much different picture than the narrative that has been out there. Evidently, throughout this offseason, James Harden has been working out with Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant. These reminded me of stories of yesteryear with LeBron and Wade and Bosh and these guys getting together. But anyway, that they've been working out together and that this idea came about. And he painted a picture that made it sound like James Harden was not happy about what happened with the coaching search and ending up with Steven Silas. Word got around that James Harden wasn't happy about all of this and that he was going to try to get out. And so Russell Westbrook jumped the gun and said, I'm trying to get out. You know what I mean? And there's no market really for Russell Westbrook, but we're going to find out what happens with James Harden. And this is obviously an extremely tough spot if you are Houston or a Houston fan to hear about this, because you have your star player turning down $50 million. So obviously he's not wanting to commit to you. He wants to go elsewhere. That news has already been made public. And then you have that whole thing about how you've got him working out with the two other players, obviously being convinced that that's where he would like to go to be able to team up with them. I had never heard anything about him not being happy about the coach or Steven Silas or whatever else. But they got a thing going on there in Houston, and they got to figure this out, because now I think I don't know what the odds would be in Vegas, but James Harden being on the Rockets next year, at least as of this morning when we're recording, that feels like an extreme long shot.
It's not a long shot.
Why not?
It's not a long shot. Because what's the incentive right here to make a deal now? They could wait during the season and potentially have more opportunities to trade him for more than what Brooklyn can offer. What's the most Brooklyn can offer? They can offer all of their future first round draft picks, all of their pick swaps, Karis LeVert, Spencer Dinwiddie, Jared Allen. That's like the most that they could offer. And for Houston, I can see the logic. Because, you would be sending Harden to a situation that, yes, would have championship expectations, but it would also be a circus that has a high probability of just imploding. With those personalities, with Kyrie there, with KD coming off a ruptured Achilles, all that. Like that has a high probability of failing. And it's also a good year to suck, because the 2021 draft has some serious potential superstar talents in it. Cade Cunningham being the number one guy right now. Really, everybody in the league has him number one. There's in next year's drafts. This year, you just said having number one doesn't appeal to you. Next year, if you tell me I have the opportunity to draft Cade Cunningham with the number one pick, I'm jumping all over that. With that said, for the Houston Rockets, is this the deal you really want to make right now, or do you want to bring back a guy who is a top 5, top 10 player in the prime of his career, who right now, today, isn't unhappy, right now, today, doesn't want to sign that extension? But if you retool this team around him, you make the smart decisions, you make the right calls, you have Steven Silas revise the offensive system by incorporating some of what Dallas did with Luka, have a little bit more ball movement, find a new actual big man. Don't have Robert Covington there anymore now that he's been traded. Have a real big. Maybe in 2 months, James Harden looks at the Rockets and he feels a lot better about where he is. If you're Houston, to me, before you blow it up, you got to give it a chance with Harden, because you don't just trade guys like that for offers that aren't no-brainers. And Brooklyn right now isn't offering a no-brainer, I got to do this, it's so overwhelming offer. It's just not there yet.
It's the Simmons, our boss, his old theory, the 4 quarters don't make a dollar. Here's what I think. I think that maybe that Brooklyn deal, as we know what Brooklyn could include in that deal, right? And so that doesn't seem like a wise move if you are Houston. I think Philly and Daryl will come over the top on this. That's my theory.
Will Tillman Fertitta trade James Harden to Daryl Morey? I've been told probably not.
For Ben Simmons?
I've been told probably not. That Fertitta wouldn't trade.
You'd have to think about it. You'd have to think about it.
I've been told probably not, and I think Morey would offer way more than just Ben Simmons. And
but maybe that.
But I've still been told unlikely that Fertitta would trade him to Morey.
That might have changed. And well, let me just throw this at you, okay? That might have changed after he turns down the $50 million and publicly says, "I want to be somewhere else."
You mean like 2 months from now?
What?
You mean
no.
like I
no,
mean?
I'm saying that might have changed last night. Once Wojnarowski reports that. The other thing is this. Look, Windhorst said last night, he intimated Daryl Morey knew this was coming.
Of course he did. It's one of the reasons why he left.
That Harden. Well, that's why if Harden wants out, look, I don't want guys that don't want to be here. I don't.
Yeah, but you also want to get the most you can get back for him.
I understand.
He has 2 years left on his deal and an option for another 3rd year.
I understand.
You got to find the right moment to do it. Are we likely heading toward a day in which we see a headline, the Houston Rockets trade James Harden? Yes, we're likely heading towards a day that happens, because everything I just said about building the right team around Harden, it's very, very difficult to do with the lack of cap flexibility, the lack of assets. I mean, they're really up against it here. If Harden wants to leave, at some point, he's probably gone. But to me, I don't think this is the right moment to detonate the roster here unless there's that over-the-top, overwhelming offer. And to me, the Brooklyn deal, it's good. If you get all of those picks, and I've heard they are throwing the kitchen sink at Houston for James Harden, all of it, all future picks, all pick swaps, and LeVert and Dinwiddie, that's a really strong offer for a player who wants to leave. With that said, you just said how with all these picks the Bucks gave up, you don't know what that's going to be. Brooklyn would have picks in the 20s every year if this thing works.
Yeah, but it's a lot riskier, and B, those guys are not the same age as
I agree.
Giannis, right? Giannis, I look at that and I say, any picks within the next 7 years, I'm okay moving off of. Bro, that thing could implode quick. And they could all end up going their separate ways. And so future picks from the Nets, you could have a maybe not as extreme, but what happened yesteryear with the whole Garnett Pierce thing, and you look up and the Celtics all of a sudden are getting unbelievable picks from the Nets. I mean, those guys are not the same age as Giannis. And look, I mean, forgive me, but I watched Kyrie Irving turn Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum into people that a lot of smart basketball people stopped believing in nearly as much as they did prior to.
I agree.
When those guys took, so I am unmotivated to believe that it's a no-brainer. It would work because I watched that happen. I watched that happen with Kyrie Irving. Well, and I get that these are his friends and whatever, but they're all moody dudes. All of them are moody dudes. And beyond that, just the basketball thing, like Jason Tatum was one of the best 5 to 10 players in the entire NBA during the playoffs in the bubble. And we are a year removed from people talking about Jason Tatum trades. And like maybe he's not going to be what we thought he was going to be.
Those people shouldn't have been talking about Jason Tatum trades. But
that was happening. That was happening.
I know.
You know what I mean?
But like I said, this is the logic in doing it now. The logic in doing it now is that you're betting on Brooklyn to fail. You're betting on the fact that KD, post Achilles, Kyrie, James Harden, and any supporting pieces they have around them being a horrible defense. That team would score a lot of points, but it would be hard for them to build a good defense. You're betting on that team imploding. You're betting on the fact KD's coming off the injury. You're betting on the fact Kyrie has a long injury history. You're betting on these things if you're Houston. And like I said, the incentive that nobody's talking about is the fact it's a good year to suck. This is a good year to tank. This is a good year to try to be bad. I've heard some teams out there that are on like the fringes of the playoffs are leaning towards thinking maybe we should suck this year because of Cade Cunningham, because of Jalen Green, because of some of these other guys. You could see them rise into top 5 picks, and Evan Mobley, as I hear Williams. There's so many guys in this year's draft that have appeal to be superstars. And Cade Cunningham, like I said, being probably that number 1 guy, Oklahoma State point guard. He's like sort of like a Ben Simmons style player. He does it all on the court for you. He's an awesome defender, 6'7" long, can switch, unbelievable passer, can score. Cunningham's going to be a really good player in the NBA.
All right, let me tell you this.
But like, that's what I mean. Houston, if you want to, you don't have to tank to get the number 1 pick because of the new draft lottery odds, but it still benefits you to be the worst because you have the higher odds. So for Houston, I'm just saying, like that you would get if you trade him to Brooklyn for a pick oriented deal rather than like say Ben Simmons, you're getting more than what you actually get in the trade. You're getting the privilege to suck.
Well, and I love LeVert. So I mean, I don't think LeVert is a nothing. You know what I'm saying? Really do.
He's not.
Okay.
And neither is Dinwiddie. Like if you wanted to flip Dinwiddie during the season, you could. Yeah. He's a solid player. And Karis LeVert is, he's a good player. He's 26 years old.
He was awesome in the
player.
bubble.
Yeah, good player.
Yeah.
Good player.
And he was their best player. And when he wasn't playing with Kyrie Irving, imagine that, he was even better. So here's the thing. And you are going to go ahead and like hold on to something, hold on to your chair or whatever. Because I think there are going to be a lot more teams, like I said, competing to win. And especially if your opportunity at being a playoff team is expanded to 10. There will be a select amount of teams that do what you say, okay, which is just suck on purpose in order to get a high draft pick, which I'm almost across the board never in favor of. That being said, if there were ever a year, and it is not because of, the promise of Cade Cunningham and Jalen Green and whatever, if there were ever a year where I would say, you know what, go ahead, it would be this one. Because you ain't shitting on your fans. You are the ones that want to watch you on TV, but nobody's going to be at these games anyway. So your home fans that spent money on season tickets, they don't have to endure this and be miserable every game night of their life. And your fans that are fans of opposite teams don't have to watch a miserable punting product for no reason. If there were ever a tank year, this is it, Kevin. And I would actually say, hey, go ahead. There's nobody that's going to be spending money on this anyway, because I have always thought that, yes, it's terrible for culture. Yes, it's terrible for acquiring players. But beyond that, I hate the idea that your fan base typically has to endure that, right? People that really care and love. And a lot of people, you would be surprised, a lot of people don't get it. I've been in an arena for a 20-win team, and they're still mad. And the little kids walk out upset that their team lost. And they don't understand that they're losing on purpose. And I think it's a terrible message to send. But there's nobody in the arenas this year anyway. So who gives a shit? Go ahead and lose every game.
I was in Houston New Year's Eve 2016. And James Harden scored like 58 points with like 17 assists and 16 rebounds. And yeah, I know it was New Year's Eve, but out in that arena, I never would have felt that he was having such a historic night. The arena's not always packed there, even when fans are allowed. And that's with having a guy like James Harden. That I think that's, if you're a hardcore Rockets fan, like, my good friend Sean Yu is, who works at the Ringer and works on our video staff. Like, if you're a hardcore Rockets fan, you look around the crowd and it's like, why are there empty seats when we have a guy like James Harden? Why? And for them, I feel like the hardcore fans understand. And I get a casual fan, a young fan, they might be like, this is disappointing. But I've always said this to you, Chris. This is where we differ in our views on like fandom. Growing up, rooting for the Celtics, the 06-07 season still remains one of my funnest years watching the Celtics. And that team, I loved watching the development. I loved watching Tony Allen get better. I loved watching Rajon Rondo's rookie year. I love seeing all these guys improved. I loved watching Ryan Gomes. I loved watching Allen Ray before a year before getting Ray Allen. And I liked seeing Paul Pierce, even though there was a possibility he would be traded. I just liked watching the Celtics that year. And I liked the idea of the potential of getting Greg Oden or Kevin Durant in the draft. I'll always remember the disappointment on draft night of the lottery night, not getting that top pick. But that year was still exhilarating for me as a fan, just watching players get better. And if the Rockets do blow it up here, I think those hardcore fans who are so plugged into the team understand why. There's disappointment and sadness that you're losing a star like James Harden. Because at the time when I was a Celtics fan, I had Paul Pierce and Antoine Walker in my life with the good Celtics teams. Those guys aren't the level of James Harden and Russell Westbrook or James Harden and Chris Paul.
They don't love him like they do. They don't love him. It's not the same connection though with that fan base. It's really not. It's not like Pierce, and it's not like
I know.
There is a fringe. I mean, I had one of the big
because the Celtics drafted Pierce when he was a kid.
Yeah. Well, like
Harden
I
was traded for.
To wit, about 3 years ago, I had one of the biggest sports talk hosts in Houston on with me, and I said, "Who is the fan favorite? Who is the most popular player on the Rockets?" And he said, "Patrick Beverley." It's without question. That's the one that the fans, know what I mean?
Don't you feel like Rockets fans would respond well to a young team that's, competitive? It's not like they're losing games on purpose.
No, I didn't say they wouldn't respond
I just don't feel bad. I just don't feel bad for fan bases that are losing because it's like there's still a lot to root for with development.
No,
I feel bad for fan bases that are losing for a decade, with no hope because they have bad management. That's what I feel bad for. And Houston could turn into that because of fertility.
Well, and I would just say,
but they're not that yet.
If I'm a Houston fan, I would say the Harden thing's run its course. I'm fine. I would say it's run its course. We had a lot of good years. I have some good memories. I have some memories of him going 2 for 11 and getting beat 114-75 on his home court.
You hate Harden. Everybody gets it.
But
everybody gets it.
And I hate that we have tried to pair him up with a million players, all of which he ends up. I mean, they've done everything they can for the guy. Everything.
Okay, it's run its course, but is now the moment to take a deal, or do you go into the season, give it a try? Because it never goes well when you trade a top 5, top 10 player in NBA history. It never goes well. Do you give it a chance and then still probably take that same trade that would still be on the table 2 months from now? Yeah, that's what I would do. Even if it means one less first round pick or one less pick swap, I'd rather take it into the year.
You think the deal gets better?
The deal could get better. That's what I'm saying. You got to go into the year. The deals could get better. There could be more teams that throw everything at you where you have your choice to pick what you want to do. Because you don't have to send James Harden where he wants to go. You don't have to send him to Brooklyn. You could send him to the highest bidder. He has 2 years left on his contract and then a third year with a player option for $45 million. You don't have to send him to Brooklyn. Like the player empowerment era has created this perception in media and with fans that like you got to do what the player wants. No, you don't. That's not how business works. That's not how the NBA works. What's going to happen is the player, Harden wants Brooklyn. The question will be, do the other 28 teams in the league decide, we know he wants to go to Brooklyn. Should we try to trade for him now? Like OKC did for Paul George, even though he wanted to go to LA, like all these other teams are over the years. That's the question that's going to be asked. We'll see what happens.
They should trade him to Charlotte.
Houston should play it slow, in my opinion. I mean, I get it. I get the logic of taking the Brooklyn deal now. Like I said, it's a great year to suck. That's an incentive. Brooklyn could implode. That's a good incentive.
Yeah. I wonder
if to me, you can get better deals. You can get better quality if you wait.